This customer ordered a Finding Nemo themed cake for her grandson's first birthday. She wanted a 2-tier cake and gave me complete creative control over the design. So I started out with this blue ombre buttercream base for both the bottom and the top tier. I used a scalloped scraper on the sides and then I stacked my cake. I knew that I wanted to add all kinds of different corals and shells, so I made some fondant and split it into different sections before coloring each one in a different bright color. I hand sculpted all of them and then I started placing them around the cake. Anytime I make an ocean themed cake, these are my favorite type of coral to add. They honestly resemble slices of cheese. I love how they give added dimension and they're also a totally different shape than the rest of the coral. Next, I start adding the character toppers, which are Nemo, Squirt, and Dory. These are toy figures, they're not sculpted, which is what the customer requested. I placed those on the cake and then I decided to add the birthday boy's name, which is Leo, in that Nemo font, which I freehanded using an X-Acto knife. Next, I made several pieces of green seaweed using strips of fondant that I just twisted up. I made them in different lengths and then I just added them all around the sides of the cake. Placing these onto the cake can be a bit tricky because they are not completely flat, so I do use some clear piping gel to the bottom and the top. Gently press both ends into the cake and then that's how I get them to stick. I added some shorter ones to the front, and once I was happy with the amount of seaweed, now I can start adding the rest of the coral in between the character figures and that seaweed. I sculpted a few purple ones and then used a toothpick to stick holes all around to give it some texture. I added some starfish and even some different shells in different colors. My favorite coral are the ones that look like they have all these little branches coming out. Like the orange one next to Dory, it reminds me of the pink one from the opening scene of the movie. I used my #1 cookie cutter to make this fondant #1 topper. I finished adding all of that coral towards the front and I used all of the leftover pieces to add to the back. Next, I decided to add some beach sand, and this would also work as a border along the bottom of both tiers. I used graham crackers and crushed it up in my food processor. I added a few drops of water to give it this like fluffy texture. Also made it a lot easier to handle than just a bunch of crumbs. I was able to grab it and then stick it into the cake. Once I added this all the way around, I decided the cake needed just a little bit something on the sides, so I backed up some white buttercream and used a small round piping tip to add these little bubbles. Pipe them in this little pattern going upwards, and I did this all the way around. And last, I added some pearl sprinkles. I added these in different sizes. I started with the small size first. I just placed those in between those bubbles and the rest of the seaweed and shells. Then I move on to the larger pearl sprinkles, which I just add in any empty space. And now this Finding Nemo cake is all done. I absolutely love how it turned out, and so did the customer. Here's what it looks like in my light box. I hope you guys like this one.